The Bernstein's family. Grandmother Maria was born at 1865 in Germany and died at 1913 in Oudtshoorn, South Africa. Grandfather Nathan was born at 1855 at Neustadt, Russia, and died at 1945 at Oudtshoorn, South Africa. Maria and Nahum had 9 children. The first was Sol Tobias, who was born at 1889 in Germany and died at 1939 in South Africa. The second was Max, who was my grandfather, who was born in 1891 in South Africa and died at 1952 in Israel. The third was David, who was born at 1892 in South Africa and died at 1969 in South Africa. The fourth was Agnes. She was born at 1894 and died at 1969 in South Africa. The fifth was Teresa. She was born at 1897 and died at 1981 in South Africa. The sixth was Alex. He was born at 1901 and died at 1961 in South Africa. The seventh was Sophie. She was born at 1903 and died at 1968 in South Africa. The eighth was Benny. He was born at 1905 and died at 1971 in South Africa. The ninth was Jenny. She was born at 1908 and she died at 1985 in South Africa. My grandfather Max was a Zionist who came to Palestine in 1925, settled in Zichron Yaakov and worked in any available work. He was a real pioneer, although he was qualified as a lawyer in South Africa. Here in Israel, there was no need for such an employee, so he was ready to work in everything. When he heard about the plan to establish a new agriculture settlement in Netanya, he immediately registered with some more friends from the Galil and came to Netanya. He applied to his family in South Africa for help in order to buy a big piece of ground. The family and especially Uncle Umpi helped and had sent him the money. He was very happy to have a farm with a dairy farming, chicken coop and a horse. My mother asked him, "Why do you work so hard while you have such an honorable profession?" Although his father's will, he himself enjoyed and preferred farming the land rather than being in an office. Those were hard times. There was not enough work for the inhabitants. Everyone got paid only 2 weeks out of a month's salary. That was the quota. With no complaints, he worked in agriculture, arcade and building. He was a role model for my mother by inheriting his love for his wonderful family in South Africa. Teresa came when my mother was 3 months old. She came to see and check with whom her brother got married and how they were living. Sure, she could see that the situation was difficult and lifestyle was low. Grandfather Max infiltrated my mother his love to the South African family. From the pictures which were sent, she had to know all the names and he used to correct her till she knew all by heart. He hoped that someone from his brothers or sister will come to settle here in Israel, but this never happened. Uncle Benny, who was a soldier in World War II, came to vacation from Egypt. That was such an excitement meeting that words cannot describe. And finally, my mother saw someone who came from South Africa. On 1952, she got married, and a month later, My grandfather died from heart attack. Later, part of the family came to visit them, but he could not realize his dream to meet them here in Israel. It's a pity and sad for him. Jenny came with the Red Cross delegation on 1955, and my mother had already 2 children. When Belle moved to England, she and Simon paid us every time a visit of 2 weeks, and it strengthened the close relations. We used to visit their friends from South Africa, and we had a good time. Auntie Teresa and Sophie came on 1963, and again it was a family experience while touring the country. After the death of Uncle Alex on 1961, Mary and Leslie and the 3 children came to Israel on 1963 before immigrating to England, and we had the chance to know each other and to keep a close relationship. Rose Bernstein used to send my mother clothes when she was little. She used to send us clothes again when I was a little girl, and that was very exciting all the time to get clothes from abroad. Dear Toby, the first cousin of my mother who volunteered as a parachute to the Nahal for a year. It was a big chance to know him, and since then my mother had finally had a brother. The relations are very close and warm with the niece and the children despite the geographical distance. Marion and Victor visit us first alone and later with their children, and we keep a close relations. My mother was invited to David's wedding and enjoyed it very much. Marion took Jenny's role model and keeps the contact with us everywhere. She knows all the family birthdays and she always sends us greetings. Thanks a lot. Beryl and Heine, London, we have a very close relations, and they came first to see us at 1998 after nagging them to follow Jenny's habit to pay a visit on the way to South Africa. My mother visited South Africa several times and saw the good life there. One of her great excitement was the visit with Jenny in Otzeren, where they met some of my grandfather's friends and also visited the cemetery and saw the graves of Nathan and Maria. That fulfilled my grandfather's will. My mother said that every time she meets with the family members, she always feels mutual qualities: honesty, loyalty, naivety, and a lot of warm family attitude. She was not educated with them, but the parents inherited all of the children to keep close relations and to continue the family relations. Grandmother Nechama came to Israel in 1925. Her brother came on 1923 and was killed in the on 1943. My grandmother was 43 and my grandfather was 42 when my mother was born. It was a real miracle to have such a baby at this age. My grandmother was working hard at the farm and helped her husband. She was a wonderful mother and a grandmother to me and to Neil. She died on 1972 at the age of 82, 21 years after my grandfather's death. On behalf of my mother, Beulah, who wrote about the Bernstein roots, I follow her since early childhood up to today. Beulah as a girl in Purim, in the military training on 1948, and as a mother to us. My mother Beulah loved to make speeches in Lorian's wedding with the Israeli flags, in the grandchildren's events, in Lauren's wedding, and in the family meetings. The 5 cousins are in close relations, following the Bernstein tradition. This ends 3 generations of the family roots, which will be continued to the next 3 generations.